Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. This is Coach Dylan Bellis. If you notice, this is the first time that I've done a video episode. And the reason why is I really want to show you what we're talking about today. I'm going to be talking to you about the PUMA Fast-R Super Shoe. It's a shoe that has just hit this market extremely fast. It's been nearly impossible to get your hands on or to get our hands on. And I'm just been seeing so many people running incredible times in this shoe. And anytime that I see something that hit the market and takes off that quickly, it gets me intrigued. And as a runner who wants to get the most out of myself, who doesn't want to get behind on the competition, of course, I want to get my hands on those shoes so that I can try them out, so that I can take them for a run, so that I can take them for a race, so that hopefully I get the most out of myself, my training, and the equipment that is legal to aid in my performance. And so this January, just 2 weeks ago, I ran the Houston Marathon in this PUMA Fast-R 3, and I have a lot to say about it. And in today's episode, I'm excited to just give you a breakdown of what I think about the shoe, just some basic specs of it. I'm no shoe reviewer. I'm not the person who is, there's so many great people out there who actually deconstruct this shoe and they do all sorts of tests. And I love to read that type of thing, but that's just not me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a breakdown of my experience of this shoe. And I'm going to maybe tell you what I think about it for different race distances and maybe if this is the proper shoe for you versus maybe some other shoe option on the market. Now, before going into my race, I had a lot of deliberation of whether or not I was going to wear the PUMA Fast-R 3. And the reason being is because I love the Asics Metaspeed Tokyo series. I've been using these Asics shoes since 2022. I love them. They've gotten better every single time they've come out, and I feel like the Tokyo model is just perfect. My body, I don't know what it is. My stride loves this shoe, particularly the edge. And I've liked the edge in almost every single model since they've come out. And I feel like that shoe has been more and more tailored to me as a marathoner and how it fits my stride than the Sky option. Even if you see some people who are racing the marathon in the Sky super successfully, I felt as though my stride pattern, the way that I like the cushioning and softness and how that sits in the shoe, the roll of that shoe itself, fit me. So then why would I think to switch it up perhaps last minute, because I didn't get the PUMA Fast-R 3 until about a month before the marathon. So I had a couple of options to try it and test it in training so that I didn't do anything new on race day, but I didn't have a lot of time to really get a full swing of it. So why would I even think about that? And that's mostly from this research study that's come up in a previous podcast episode that I talked about, of how they engineered this shoe to be the best running shoe, to be the most economical, to be the fastest running shoe based on data alone. And what they were able to do is they found that they were able to have over a 3% increase from this model from the previous model, and also 3% better than any of the super shoes, I guess, that they tested during this study, including the Nike models of shoes, which is a big deal because Nike, Alphafly, and Vaporfly, it controls the market. You still see more people. I mean, they were like the first ones to do it, right? And you still see these races flooded with people in Alphaflies, and it's a beloved shoe. But Puma has really started to come into the game. They've made some excellent shoes. I've been running in the Mag Maxes for some of my easy runs. It's a max stack shoe. Love it. And so this Puma shoe came out and I've been trying to get my hands on it ever since. And I decided to give it a try. And I was able to do a few really key workouts for prior to the marathon. And I actually used this shoe for the marathon, despite some little hiccups along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and unveil the shoe now because I've been holding it in my hand now for 4.5 minutes. But you can take a look. I'll put these laces away. So this is what we're looking at when we're talking about the PUMA Fast-R 3. As you can tell, it's a very aggressive looking shoe. As you see, there's this gap here between the heel and the forefoot. You get this plate, this carbon fiber plate that is exposed here that runs the full length of the shoe. And I'll just do a little 360, give you a look here. So if you haven't seen the shoe, there's a couple things that really stand out when you're looking at it. There's no heel. So that's a little odd, right? So people tend to think, okay, well, I'm a heel striker. I definitely can't run in this shoe because then the back of my foot is going to be hitting the ground. So yeah, there's definitely a missing part here. This segmented, there's a name for it, but I just can't remember. But this segmented between the forefoot and the rear of the shoe does make it look extra funky and almost makes it look as though it's the similar to the original Alpha Fly, which had a very similar look to it as well. You'll see there's actually a little lip here at the toe, which may help get a little extra propulsion off the shoe. And so what we're seeing here is that this shoe pushes you a little bit more forwards. And the idea is that it kind of gives you more of a forward propulsion movement there with that lip, without the heel. And that makes this shoe feel really weird when you're just like walking around or even just going for an easy run. You would never want to run with this shoe on any easy paces. It's uncomfortable, it's inappropriate, and it just doesn't feel right. The first time that I put the shoe on and I was walking around before I started the faster portion of my workout, I was like, this is odd. This is such a weird sensation. But as soon as I got running, I actually didn't see any issues with it. I didn't even really think about the fact that there was a heel missing. Now, for me, I tend to land a little bit more mid-footed to fore-footed, so it does fit my stride pattern more than maybe some other people would. But I've read several reviews online that says that people who even were more of a heel striker didn't have too much of an issue with transitioning to the shoe. But there's an asterisk there. Some people do feel that it puts more stress and strain on their lower legs. And I would agree with this, and I'm going to touch on that a little later. So let's just continue looking here. The colorway here is actually interesting. This is the Ekiden version of this shoe. So you don't see this one as much on the market. It was more of like a limited sale, I believe, but I really like that colorway. I think that's really slick. The upper here is super thin, just incredibly thin. So if you're running in cold weather, your feet will be freezing. But I do find that it would probably be great for moisture wicking, and it didn't bother my foot whatsoever. I don't know about the durability there, but I'm sure it's fine. But again, you have to remember that this is a super shoe. It's not meant to be run for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So if you're worried about the durability of the upper here, you're probably wearing the shoe a little too much, to be honest. So I wouldn't put more than 100, 150 miles on this shoe. And I really wanted to minimize the amount of running that I did prior to my marathon on it because I didn't want to lose the gains of the shoe. So I did a couple bigger runs in it, but I had less than 30 miles on the shoe prior to my marathon. Wanted to break it in a little bit, but I didn't want to overuse it and abuse it because I would still like to use this shoe in the future for future races. So what else about this shoe can we talk about? Laces are fine. I think they're just kind of standard laces. They're not as good as the Asics ones. I didn't have any issues with them. They're nice and stretchy, so you shouldn't have any issues tying them up or even doing something like a heel lock if you absolutely have to. I had to do that earlier. The sizing of it is I actually sized down. So a lot of times I wear a men's size 10. I actually sized down to a 9.5. And when I first tried the shoes, I tried a 9 on, and it was a little tight, but wasn't too far off. The overall width of the shoe is great, at least personally is what I feel like. I have a wider forefoot. I actually had surgery on my left foot for a Morton's neuroma back when, and I've always needed wider shoes to help that extra splaying now that I got that intermetatarsal ligament snipped. So my foot does splay a little bit more, and I felt really nice and comfortable in the shoe and had no issues there. You're going to have well, let me backtrack here and just say that the forefoot of the shoe is nice and wide. But for those of us who have wider midfoots, you might not love it there because it is a little bit more narrow here on the inner part of the shoe. And if you are a heavy pronator, you are going to be falling over the side there. I'm not going to show you guys today, but if I showed you how my foot fits in here, I have very flat feet. I have severe overpronation. I don't do anything about it. I never have needed to. I wear a neutral shoe. My foot likes it. But yeah, I definitely hang over the edge there quite a bit. But to be honest, I hang over the edge in most super shoes. So that's really the outside of the shoe. And it has the Nitro Elite foam, which I think is an excellent foam. I think it feels really nice, and it's not too soft. It's not too firm. The outer here is The, gosh, what do they call it? The PUMA grip. Super nice and tacky. Never had any issues with that. Turning corners on slick surfaces or wet surfaces. No issues there whatsoever. It is very thin. So I think if you're going to wear this often, it's probably going to wear down quite quickly. So again, not a shoe that you need to be wearing for an extensive amount of miles. So how does it feel? Actually really nice once you start going. You definitely feel it's a little lower of a profile shoe. If you switch from the Asics like I did in beginning reps to then putting this shoe on for your last couple of reps, you'll kind of feel this like sinking feeling. You don't have that nice cushion in the mid part of the foot, and you definitely feel more level on the ground. But I found that even though there was a difference there in terms of the feeling and firmness of the shoe comparatively, I really liked the roll and the bounce and the feedback that I was getting from this shoe. So while I could feel more of the ground, is the best way I would describe it. I felt like I was running faster. And I have data to prove that too. In my workouts that I did a few, I guess I can talk about the workouts. So the first workout I did 3 by 2 miles. I did that all on the track, so 3,200 meters, roughly the same distance. In the first 2 reps, I did those in the Asics. And then the last rep, I did them in the Pumas. And I ran about 5 seconds faster for the 3,200 meters at the same effort in the Pumas and compared to the Asics shoe. Now, I'd say it's the same effort, but then I go and look at my heart rate data and I do see a slight increase. This could be for a couple of reasons. It could just be because it was the last rep of the session. I was a little tired, but also could be that it was more of an actual internal effort. But I felt that physically, though, I had a nice boost from there and had a nice, maybe it was more placebo effect. Now, the next workout that I did in the shoe is I did a 4 mile, actually did a 20-minute tempo in it. In the previous week, I did a 30-minute tempo in the Asics, and I averaged I believe it was right around 5:10, 5:11 in those Asics shoes. Felt okay, wasn't the best workout in the world. And then a couple weeks later, I did the 20-minute tempo and I did those ones in the Asics and I ran 5:09. I felt a lot smoother. Maybe it was the lesser distance there. Maybe it's just I was a little more rested and tapered, but it was faster yet again. My third workout that I did was 40 times minute on, minute off. And this is where I alternate threshold. So around 60-minute race pace, close to half marathon pace, alternated that with a little slower than marathon pace, with the idea of in this 80 minutes that I'm running, I'm going to try and average right around marathon pace. And I was able to insert myself into a race, 10-mile race here locally, where I could do 10 miles of it and then I could add on the 5 extra miles afterwards. So all in all, I ran 15.4 miles, an hour and 20 minutes, which ended up being 5:12 pace per mile, which is pretty close to what I was aiming for in the marathon. And couple things that I noticed. First off, felt amazing. Like I felt really good from the gun. I was running really quick for the minutes on. The minutes steady were nice and even. I feel like it was a good session. But one thing that I did notice towards the end of it was that I started getting a little weird feeling in my Achilles area. I remembered back to when I did that 3 by 2 mile session, I got a little twinge in my Achilles in the first 800 meters of that workout, or the last 800 meters of the last rep. I didn't really think too much about it. Did my cool down, it was absolutely fine, but I did feel it for a couple days afterwards. And flash forward, did the 15 by minute on, minute off. And I felt it relatively early in the race. Kind of just got this weird twinge in my left Achilles. The previous workout, it was in my right, but it didn't bother me, and I continued doing the run itself. It felt good, but I did notice that my calves, my lower legs, were starting to get really tight. And I thought to myself, well, this might be normal because I'm doing this big workout. It's about to be at 15 miles worth of marathon pace. It's my biggest workout to date. Like I can't expect me not to be tired. This is going to be a really hard session. This is the biggest workout of the block. So again, just put it out of mind. Felt really good. Felt like I got nice, good response. I did tend to tail off a little the last 5 miles. And I will say that the first 10 miles, I felt like my stride, my energy, the shoes felt really good. And then the last 5 miles, I didn't really feel the smoothest. Kind of felt like I was maybe fighting a little bit. But again, I'm not thinking too much because It's 15. I'm running 15 miles hard. You're going to get tired at the end of this workout. You're going to get tired at the end of a marathon. That's just how things go. That's why we train. So that was that session. I did one other session prior to my marathon, and that was 3 by 10 minutes. Did that the week before the race. I did the first 2 reps in the ASICs. My first rep was the slowest rep. My second rep was a little faster. And then my third rep, I switched shoes, put the Pumas on, and I was 5 or 6 seconds faster per mile for those 10 minutes. I was flying. I was running like 5 minute pace. And I felt like it was the easiest that I've run 5 minute pace in a very long time. It felt really good. I was really happy with it. But what I didn't tell you is that the week before, I was having a lot of Achilles. I wouldn't even call it an issue, but it was more of an annoyance. It was just kind of there. And it gradually got better and better and better. And when I got to the 3 by 10 minute workout, it hadn't been bothering me anymore, but it was just noticeable enough. So this was a week before the race. And I started to ask myself, is it going to be a risk to wear this shoe for the marathon? Because for me, I was getting a lot of pulling, a lot of tension and tightness, feeling more sore wearing this shoe than my other shoes. But I also noticed that I was running faster. So this is a dilemma that's really difficult to work through. What are you going to do? What am I going to do on marathon race day? Do I go with the fastest shoe and take the risk of blowing up? Or do I take it safe and maybe run a little slower if I think that that shoe is the slower shoe? And the days passed. I got to race day. I did not bring the Asics with me. I brought the Puma shoes, so I was fully committed. Body was feeling okay. Achilles was feeling all right. Maybe some phantom pain here or there, but I did the workout, my warm up, before the race itself. Nice and easy. I came back to the hotel and I told my wife, as long as my body holds on physically, nothing weird, no cramps, no muscular issues, I'm going to have a great day. Like that's how I felt. I was so confident going into race day, going into the race that morning. And the race started. If you listen to my previous episode on how Houston went, I don't want to really go too much into the layout of how this race went because I spent nearly an hour talking about it. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you don't need to listen to it again. I will sound very redundant, but it was great. Up to 10 miles, I did start to feel some weird feelings in my Achilles lower leg area, and I started to have that doubt creep in my head. Is like, is this going to blow up? Is this going to get worse? And by the time I got to 16 or 17 miles, I was starting to feel that pain in my calf area, and I started actually getting cramps, little muscle twitches in that area. Not quite a full seizure, but it was definitely starting to bother me. And then after that fact, after 18 to 20 miles all the way in, I was very sore. My legs they just didn't feel very good. And I felt like I was not running very efficiently later into the race. I will preface this with saying that in other races, when I used to run in the Nike Vaporfly, I also had some calf related problems later in the race. So this might not be a fully blame on the shoe, but I did want to mention that I did feel more sore after the workouts that I did in the Pumas. And I definitely felt the soreness during the race later in the race as well. This could all be very normal stuff. It's the marathon. It's hard. You're going to get tired. Your muscles are going to get worn down. If you don't pace it perfectly, you could have these mistakes. I don't have an exact explanation or solution. Did I run a little too fast early on? Possibly. Could it have been the shoes? Possibly. But this is my experience. And I will say that my conclusion coming off this race is that unless I do some very strict calf related work, isometrics, just, getting my legs used to running in this shoe more properly, I will probably not run in this shoe for the marathon again, or at least until I feel as though my body is strong enough to be able to do it. Because my takeaway is that the benefits of the speed of this shoe, of how quick and how awesome it feels, doesn't outweigh my loss of economy later in the race, which sounds completely backwards because this shoe is supposed to boost your economy. It's supposed to make things feel easier. It's supposed to help you get faster. But for me and my stride, I felt like I broke down more of this, and my mechanics may just not be there. The way that my body is set up just might not be there. And I feel like those gains were offset by the negative effects of losing economy and having some more muscular strain in my system. Now, do I think that if I would have worn the Asics shoes, maybe this would have gone differently? It's hard to say. It's impossible to say. I can't sit here and tell you that, oh, I would have run a minute faster. But there is some belief of mine that if I was to wear the Asics shoes, I may have run a little slower early on, but I think I could have possibly, again, not trying to create excuses, held on for a little longer later into the race, which may have saved a few seconds per mile, maybe even a little bit more, because by the end of the race, I was running 20 to 25 seconds slower than all the miles that I was running between the start of the race and mile 22. So that's my take. I don't think that I love this as a marathon shoe, but what about for you? What should you do? I know a lot of people who love this shoe, who swear by it, who are running 4-hour marathons, 3-hour marathons, 2-hour marathons, and they love the shoe and they swear by it. I think if you are really good mechanically, if you are a strong individual, if you don't have calf, Achilles related issues, or you haven't had those in the past, this might be a better shoe for you. If you are generally a more economical person, I don't think I'm very economical relative to my ability to push power, to be able to my VO2 max. I have a great ability to take in oxygen according to those metrics, but I think for me, it's the economy issue, and I need to improve on these things. And I need a shoe that might help offset that and might not expose that a little bit more. I think for most people, you're probably not going to love this shoe for the marathon. I think it is a bit too aggressive. I do think that it pushes you up on your toes more than your average shoe. And if you're not prepared for that, I probably wouldn't risk it for the marathon itself. Now, if you are a risky person and you're like me and you want the best shoe possible, at least from what science says at this given time, go for it. And maybe you can find out yourself, but I would definitely test it in training so that you can see, compare like I did. Does this shoe make you more fatigued after you do a workout? Does it make you more tired? And I think if the answer to that is yes, then this shoe is probably not the shoe that you're going to want to use for the distance. Now, what about a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon? Honestly, I think this is great. I think I would totally go with this shoe because I think for me, muscular breakdown does not occur in the same way in the 5, 10, half marathon as it does in the marathon. The marathon is such a fatiguing event. It's an endurance event. It's can you last? Who can not lose as much battery as quickly as possible. But I think for me, I could race a 5K in this really fast, 10K super fast, half marathon, same thing. I think this is going to be an excellent shoe for those race distances, and I would recommend it to just about anybody who are running under about 90 minutes for a half. I think as soon as you start getting over 90 minutes, we're talking about, different usages of energy systems, more needs for fueling, that type of thing. And I think the longer you're out there, probably the more risk there is going to be in terms of feeling that breakdown. That's what I think, and I think that you would enjoy this shoe if you're looking for something really fast, really sharp, really snappy for those shorter distance races. Now, this is a very expensive shoe. It's not cheap. It's not going to last you very long. I wouldn't put too much, if you think you're going to get 500 miles out of this shoe at its peak, I just don't think that's going to happen. This is a save it for races only type of shoe, or at least a few key workouts before the race itself. A lot of miles in this because, again, risk for injury and just, I don't think it's going to last very long. And that makes it hard. It makes it hard for purchasing because, you want a shoe that's going to be very durable. I feel like my Asics shoes are really durable. I've had some other shoes that I felt like were not. For me, the way that my foot strikes the ground, Vaporflies just didn't do it for me. The Alpha Flies also worn down. The way that my foot in the edge are really great, but in the sky, I break down the shoe relatively quickly. But there are some super shoes that you can put 2, 3, 4, 500 miles in them, and they won't be as good as when you first got them, but at least you can still wear the shoes. So that is my take on the Fast-R 3. I'm trying to see if I have any other notes here that I feel like would be relevant to continue this conversation. I don't really think that there is. If you do have any questions for me regarding this shoe or my experience in the shoe, please drop a comment, send me a message, ask me about them. If you've worn these shoes and you have a positive experience that maybe disagrees with me, I would also love to hear that. The cool thing about shoes and shoe reviews is that they're different for everybody. Everyone's going to have a different experience. And I feel like the value of me putting this out is maybe to help someone who's in a very similar situation to me, who's kind of on the fence, who likes another shoe, but might be looking to kind of take that next jump and maybe just kind of add another point to the conversation. Because I spent a lot of hours reading about this shoe, watching videos, reading the research, trying to determine if this was worth me getting my hands on and if this was going to be helpful for me. So I found it very helpful to read about the people who were running 4 or 5 hours who tried the shoe. I really enjoyed watching the likes of Rory Linkletter, who has run incredibly fast. He's a Canadian record holder now in the half marathon in this shoe because he's run super fast. He's continued to get better, and other people have had the same experience. But there's also been a lot of people who say that they haven't had that experience. They felt like it was more aggressive. And I found that those conversations to be very helpful. So my final thoughts on this is that the PUMA Fast-R is a very bold, a very specific shoe. I don't think it's very forgiving. I don't think that it works for everyone, but like in the right hands with the right person, you might find that in the right stride, you might find like this is the fastest, most efficient shoe. But in the wrong scenario, it can feel very demanding. You can have some regret later in a race, but I'd say give it a test. Try it at marathon pace. Try it when you're especially really fatigued, and then just have that conversation with yourself and just be honest about how you feel later in that workout, the next day after the workout, or even later in a race if you can possibly test it for some shorter differences. So that's the main difference, I think, between this shoe. I mean, that's the main difference between this shoe working for you and not working for you. That's my thought on the Fast R3. Let me know if you enjoyed the video format of this, if you watched it, if you didn't watch it. It's totally fine either way. I just felt like this was more relevant of a conversation to do via video as well as audio. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for listening once again. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.